So hello everyone. Um, are you able to hear me? Yeah, that's fine. Mic is working. Okay. So as has been introduced, myself Sushant Pawar. I'm working as a database solution consultant for Ashnik. Most of you might have visited our booth outside there, so you might be aware what exactly Ashnik do, what kind of business we do. But for those who were not able to visit us there, for them I will just give a brief introduction. So Ashnik, it is an open source solution provider company. We provide solution on the various open source solution on the various big data platforms. For more information, definitely we will have some time after the session as well. So definitely, if you can visit our booth over there, definitely. So that may give some information to you as well. Okay, regarding the presentation. So does the title, it looks somewhat interesting to you guys. I'm not sure whether you find it interesting. But indeed, it was an interesting experience or the learning experience for us. So this is about actually the issue that we had faced at one of our customers' side. So, and it was because of the Autovacuum, the replication, and it was a batch query which had caused some trouble for us. And how we tried to troubleshoot that issue, what kind of analysis we did, what solution we implemented, and what was our learning from that particular incident. So I will share all those things with you guys. And I hope it will be helpful for you as well. Maybe it might be the case that you might have faced this particular issue, but definitely it will be learning experience for most of us. Okay, so this is how the architecture looks like. So we had implemented the database. We had done the installation for the client. They have the master and standby database running, which is on the Postgres version 9.4. And the replication between them, it happens by using the streaming replication protocol. In the middle layer, we had configured the PG pool so that you all are aware, or if not, I will just give a brief introduction that PG pool, it is used for connection pooling as well as for load balancing. So basically, we were trying to do the load balancing over here so that select load can be equally distributed between the master and standby server. And to talk about the hardware configuration, yeah, they were having like 4-core CPUs with 32 GB RAM, which I would say it was sufficient enough for their current workload, or I would say even for the next few years, the kind of workload they have, this kind of hardware, it can sufficiently handle that particular workload. Yeah, one more thing. So this implementation, just wanted to give some brief background. So we had done this implementation in the year of 2015, June 2015, Frank. So when this implementation was done, from that point till this particular issue happened, we didn't face any major database related issue. Yeah, there were some issues, but they were mostly regarding like there was like a failover, but that I would say that was a false failover because of some VM related issue, like VM motion that happens, that kind of issues that had happened. Because of that, those issues we faced. But on this particular day, when the issue occurred, the application team, they started facing some connectivity issue. The front-end application connectivity, it was getting disconnected. Even the users, they were saying the performance slowness at the application level. And on the database side, so the DBA, actually they have their own DBA team. So the DBA who was like a resident DBA over there, so he was saying he saw that there was high CPU utilization, and there were around like 500 plus concurrent sessions which were executing some queries. And those queries, they were using such a load that was not anticipated, and it was causing high CPU utilization. And so the application on the database, it had become unresponsive that moment. Oops, sorry, my mistake. Yeah, so the immediate action that was taken by the DBA was he did a failover. He brought up the standby as a master. He promoted it as a master, and after some time, they even bring back the old primary as a standby database, and basically they did a reverse replication. And that somehow resolved the issue at that moment. And at the same time, they did some hardware upgradation on the old production. It was a 3-core CPU, so they added 3 more, and it was a 6-core CPU. That was the hardware changes that they did. The DBA, he was not able to gather the data at the time of the issue. But later we did some analysis, we had some monitoring script deployed over there. So by using that, we were able to figure out that there were some frequently run cost returning queries, and which had which had increased the, I would say, CPU utilization. And apart from that, there was this particular batch job, which consists of, I would say, the select and the delete queries actually. And so the select and the delete, this particular batch job, it runs every 2 hours over there. Okay, so let me tell you about the batch job. So I forgot to mention it in the beginning. So this particular batch job, it runs every 2 hours in their environment. And what exactly it does is that this batch job, it touched the 2 tables which are there, which are the main critical application tables for them. And that from there, it will read some data, and it will then delete the data from there row by row. So it will do the heavy delete on those particular 2 tables. So the intensity was very high for the deletion, that while when the job is running for almost frequently for 2 hours, if it has started from maybe in the morning, so when it has got executed maybe 3 or 4 times during the day, so by the time when the job is getting executed maybe at 11 or 1 to 2 p.m. between, so by the time usually it used to get very slow. So that is what they had observed before this issue as well. And the reason for that was, as I mentioned, the batch job, it was doing it was dealing with every row inside the table. And that row, when we are saying that every row is getting deleted from the table, definitely those tables definitely will become a candidate for the auto vacuuming, because most of you guys have been working, I guess that you have been working on the Postgres for very recently or maybe for a long time, but you might be aware of the auto vacuuming. So auto vacuuming, what it does is that if there are any updates or deletes that are happening on the database or on the table, so there will be some dead rows that will be created. So the auto vacuuming, it will mark those dead rows for the reuse purpose. So that is one main task the auto vacuuming it does. So that is what. So in this particular case, since the batch job, it was deleting the rows, it was causing the auto vacuum to be run during the batch job deletion itself. So the batch job, the auto vacuum, it was competing with the delete query for the CPU, and all 3 reasons at that moment had caused the high CPU utilization at the server level. Okay, so once they did a failover, after that, rest of the day it went on smoothly, and the application user, they were able to do their business without any further issues. But on the next day, I would say that was not the end of the story. So the next day, they started facing issue on the new standby, which was the old production server, and on the standby, the connection over there, it started failing with this particular error. So the connection, they were failing due to conflict with the recovery. And the cause for that error was that the query, usually on the select query, which are getting executed on the standby. So they were holding the log for very long time, and so they were doing conflict with the recovery process. And so this error actually this error started occurring between 1 to 2 p.m. So initially for 1 or 2 days, they thought of just ignoring it, but later we came to know about the routine that, okay, this error is happening just for between this particular interval only. And after that, usually the server was performing, I will say the performance was back to the normal. Well, then they again revert back to the old configuration, means the old master, it was again bring back as a master database. At the same time, then we, Ashnik, with the help of the DBA team, that we try to figure out the error, why this error is actually it is occurring at the database level, conflict with the recovery. Well, there are various reasons this error can happen. So that moment we thought that, while definitely we went through some documents over that. So that time we thought that, okay, when you are executing any select query on the standby server, so that query, it might be accessing some rows, and those rows, might have already become invalid rows on the primary side. So on the primary, the Autovacuum will try to delete those rows, or it will try to revoke those rows while doing Autovacuum. And then when those changes are reapplied on the standby side, then it will cause the conflict with the select queries, and those select queries will be terminated. So to avoid that, there is one parameter, hot standby feedback, that you can set on the primary server, on the standby server. So when you are setting this parameter on the standby server, what will happen is that you are executing the select query. So the standby server, it will send that information to the primary server that, okay, I'm at the moment we are executing the select query, and these are the particular rows, these are being accessed. So what the primary it will do is that it will not delete those old rows till the time these particular queries are getting executed. So we can avoid the session getting terminated because of this particular conflict with recovery error. Then there is one more parameter, max standby streaming delay. So we had a discussion internally whether we should set this parameter. Well, what this parameter does is that the default value for this parameter is 30 seconds. So if you have enabled this parameter on the standby server, then the recovery process, when it is trying to apply some changes, so it will see whether if there is any query which is getting executed, select query which is getting executed, and whether it is trying to access some particular rows. So it will wait for the 30 seconds for that query to get completed, or if it doesn't get completed, then that particular query will get terminated. The select query will be terminated. And if you set this parameter to -1, so there was a thought in the team that, okay, we should set this parameter to -1 so that the error this is occurring on the standby, it will never happen. Because when we are setting it to -1, the standby will wait forever for it will wait for all the select queries to complete, and only then it will apply those recovery, the changes which are coming from the primary, it will apply on the standby server. But by considering the high availability requirement from our customer side, they do not want to implement it, because when you are implementing this particular parameter, definitely it will cause some data lag, because when you are stopping the recovery from applying the changes on the standby, definitely your standby, it will lag behind with the primary. And our customer, they do not want it to happen this, so we couldn't go ahead with the parameter. And yeah, there was this particular view as well. So we took a help of this view, PGStat database conflict. So what exactly this particular view shows you? When there are the conflicts which are happening on the standby server, so this view, it will give information about the conflicts which are happening only on the standby server. So there are columns like conflict table space, conflict logs, conflict snapshot. So these are the columns you can see. And it will give the conflict count for particular column per database. This is just the example snapshot, not the real snapshot of error what we found. This is I have just taken for the example purpose. So the conflict table space, what exactly this error will occur if the queries are getting cancelled due to drop table space. If you have dropped some table space on the primary side, and there are some objects inside the table space which are currently being accessed by the standby server or with the queries on the standby server. Then when the changes are getting replicated on the standby, so it will conflict with those changes and will cause the select query termination on the standby side. Then there is a conflict log, which usually will happen if there are some queries which need an exclusive log at the table level, and those queries, those are getting replicated on standby. So they will also will cause the termination of the select queries which are currently being executed on the standby server. Similarly, there is a conflict snapshot that I think I already discussed. It is because if there are some rows which are being accessed and those rows are getting vacuumed by the primary, and then in that case, this error that may occur. Then there is conflict buffer pin, so it is due to the pin buffer, and deadlock, we are all aware of that. So we were aware by this time, okay, the queries on the standby server, they are getting terminated because of some conflict. So the first approach that we took was to identify, one thing I forgot to mention, in our case, when we saw this particular view, PGStat database conflict, so for our database, we could see there were almost like a 12 conflict because of the log. So it was log conflict that was causing the standby queries to get terminated. And for other conflicts, we didn't have any count over there. So the queries in our case, it was because of the log conflict, they were getting failed. So that's why the approach that we took was first try to identify whether there are any DDL which are getting executed on the primary, or any truncate, or whether any reindexing being done by the application team, or whether they are doing any manual vacuum. So we spoke with the application team, and they give confirmation that no, they are not making any such DDL or any kind of manual vacuuming from their end. So that possibility was taken out. Then the next thing that we could think of, okay, so what we were looking for, the DDL queries, so those are the queries that could cause the exclusive log. So those we couldn't find that moment. So the next approach that we took was try to identify the long running or the high CPU queries, because those queries which are running for a long time, definitely they will at particular moment they will do the conflict with the any kind of those reasons, maybe because of that exclusive log and maybe that auto vacuuming. So we thought that, okay, we will try to tune those queries, and we'll try to bring down the execution time so that those queries will be executed within short period on the standby, and it will reduce the probability of receiving this particular error. But unfortunately, we didn't even find any long-running queries on the server. Okay, so the next thing that we could think of, okay, so since there are no long-running queries, what we thought is that, okay, we set parameter log min duration statement. We set it to almost like 10 seconds. So all queries which are running more than the 10 seconds, and which are the CPU intensive, for us, we took a criteria like the query which are running for taking more than 30% CPU. So those we will take it as a high CPU intensive query. So by setting the log min duration statement to 10 seconds, and by using with the help of top, we could identify almost like 7 queries which were CPU intensive. And then we try to tune those queries. So we were able to create some indexes on those queries. And when we created indexes, the performance of those queries got improved. So the execution time has got reduced. So definitely, when you are executing on the standby server, so they will get executed very fast. So after making those changes, we thought, okay, so since we have made changes, we have made our query faster, definitely it will help us, and we should not face this error again in the future. But this time the issue reoccurred, and surprisingly, it occurred in the midnight. All the prior occurrence, they were during the period of 1 to 2 p.m., but this time it was at around like in the midnight. And after doing so much tuning, so this issue had occurred, so we were surprised, and we really wanted to know what was causing this particular error. And this time we found that, okay, the batch job, that was the only query which was getting executed on the primary. Okay, so then we try to find out the logic behind inside this particular batch job. We sat with the application team, and then was the only case time we came to know what I explained earlier, that this particular batch job, it is running when it is getting executed. It is there are like select queries which are getting executed, and at the same there is a delete query which is deleting every row inside the table. And when you are executing the every row, and when you are doing the query multiple times, like 2 hours, every 2 hours the batch job was getting executed. So what we did, we tried to reproduce the error by executing the batch job on the pre-production server. So we run this particular batch multiple time within like every 1 hour, up to every 1 hour. And at the same time, we set this parameter, log autovacuum min duration. So when you are setting the log autovacuum min duration, then it will log each and every operation that is done by the autovacuum process, and that operation that will be logged inside the log file. And so and after that, definitely we executed the query, and what we saw is that these two tables, yeah, they were getting vacuum on the each run. And when we are executing this job for the multiple times, after that, at a particular, then there will be some at particular moment will come when Autovacuum, it will find that there are some pages which contains all the dead rows. Because Autovacuum, it usually does, it is just marking the rows for the reuse. But when you are removing you are deleting rows on every run, so the moment will occur, it may occur that there will be few pages which will contain all the dead rows. And this is particular moment when auto-vacuuming, it will also try to shrink those pages. Though this is not the task which is done by the auto-vacuuming. Auto-vacuuming just do the vacuuming of the pages. But when you are doing, when it will find such pages with the dead rows, then it will try to do it will try to shrink those pages. And that is the time it will take an exclusive log on those tables. Yeah, so this was the issue that was occurring. This was the case that was occurring in our case. So when the auto-vacuum, it was taking an exclusive log on the primary side, those logs were getting replicated on the standby server. And when those logs are getting replicated on standby, so it was, what are the queries which are accessing those tables, so those queries, they were getting terminated. So yeah, so this is how actually we were able to find out this, the actual cause. And this particular parameter also helped us in understanding the real culprit over here. Yeah, so the interim resolution in this case was, though it is not recommended to switch off the vacuuming on a table, auto-vacuuming on a table, but for like a temporary solution, we had to disable this on a table so that the table, it will not become a candidate for the exclusive log, and it will not cause the query to be failed. And yeah, we also took an approach that we will set a manual vacuum. So whenever there is a production hour, there are non-production hour, when this table is not getting used very highly, that time we ask the DBAs that they can do the manual vacuum over there. And the long-term solution, definitely, we ask the application team to make changes in the query so that actually, rather than deleting every row inside the table, they should make some changes so that this particular table, they will not become a candidate for a vacuum shrink. Yeah, so that was all about the issue that actually we faced. And the learning, I would say, so definitely whenever you are configuring the standby server, or you are configuring the replication, just make sure you are setting this parameter or standby feedback on, so that you will not get this kind of errors on your standby if you are thinking of using your standby actively as maybe for reporting purpose, or maybe for some other for running some select queries. And usually the approach we take is that we try to tune the queries which are high CPU or the long running queries. But it is not necessary that those queries only will be the bottleneck at your server level. There might be some queries that might get executed within a few seconds, but those might be the high CPU intensive queries. And when such high CPU intensive queries, if they get executed at a time almost like in multiple session, then they may hamper your performance as well. So try to tune those small running queries, but the high CPU intensive. Yeah, and this was the major learning that vacuuming, though its usual task is to do mark the pages, mark the date rows for the vacuum purpose, and do the analysis. But at few occasions, definitely it will also try to shrink the pages, and it will try to reclaim the space at the storage level. Yeah, it is documented on the PostgreSQL org site. You can see over there. Yeah, it is documented there. Yes, so here you can see that what we did in this case was we switched off the auto vacuuming on the table level and not on the database level, because it is never recommended to disable it on the database level, because when you are disabling vacuuming at the database level, it means that actually you are stopping your database from collecting the statistic. You may think of collecting it manually, but at some at some point it may happen that human error may occur, and it may cause that your database not getting vacuum properly. So let's leave this task to the vacuum process, the auto vacuum process. Let it do the most of the tasks at the database level. And then there are the conflicts which we discussed about. So the row version conflict and the conflict because of logs, those are two different conflicts. Like the row version conflict, it can happen because of the dead rows which are being accessed on the standby, and primary seeing those rows as a dead rows, and it will try to vacuum those rows. And the log, it can happen in the cases, as I mentioned, that Postgres, the primary side, it is trying to, the auto vacuum, it is trying to shrink those pages. So these are two different cases. So when you are seeing the conflict errors on your side, just you can have the look at the view pgstat database conflict, and that can help you to try to more troubleshoot on this particular error. Yeah. Sorry? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, as I mentioned, Autovacuum definitely doesn't take exclusive log because it just marks the rows for the reuse, so that's why it doesn't take. But there will be, in some cases when the Autovacuum sees there are some pages there in the table which has all the dead rows. So when it will see those pages in that particular situation, it will take exclusive log. So there are this is one of the scenario where it will take a exclusive log. Otherwise, normally it will not take. Huh? Generally not, yeah. Yeah, so this was like kind of short story about the incident that we faced and the tuning we tried to do. So let me know if you have any queries or questions to ask.
In auto vacuum on, can if my tables are only for select purpose, only one time data is available, can these are also auto vacuum, or in DML operation perform, then auto vacuum is on tables?
Well, auto vacuuming, it does the vacuuming based on some threshold parameters. So for the there are some threshold parameters. When those parameters are reached for the objects, that time those tables they will become a candidate for the vacuuming.
For example, if we have one table in 20 GB and only 20 GB data in selection purpose, not any other DML purpose like insert, update, not perform anything.
Okay, you mean to say that you are not making any changes on the table?
Yeah.
Yeah, in such situation, they will not become candidate for the auto vacuuming. Auto vacuum will not do any kind of vacuuming over there.
Okay.
Yeah, in such, but we will recommend that if you find such tables or if you are aware of those tables, you should manually do the vacuum on those tables, because definitely it always helps to be a protective and to gather your statistic on a protective basis rather than waiting for some issues to occur. Sorry?
Why you need a vacuum for that case? Analyze if the 20 GB data is only for read query, why do we need to do vacuum? We can do only analyze.
Yeah, that is also fine. Yeah.
So both are two
Yeah,
activities.
yeah, sorry. So yeah, definitely we can do analysis. Sorry, my mistake. We can do the analysis, yeah. Right. Suggestion as such, we just ask them to look at the query, the logic of the that is there right now in the batch, because the batch what is doing, it is deleting the every row inside that particular table. So definitely this is something they can think of some other alternatives. We didn't tell them, okay, this is something you should implement. We didn't give them some concrete answer over there. But we saw that, okay, this is particular, it's a bottleneck which is causing hampering your database. So this is something at which you should look at.
So when they fixed that part of the application, did you go back and revert it to auto vacuum for the table, or did it still stay as manual vacuum?
Till now, they have not made any changes in their batch jobs. So because of that, we have to live with that this particular, I will say, workaround.
Did you try tuning the parameter? Did you try tuning the parameter vacuum defer cleanup edge? Because that will defer the cleanup in the slave to some transactions which you provide.
Vacuum defer page.
Defer cleanup.
Vacuum defer cleanup page.
Cleanup edge.
Yeah, but again, if you are setting that parameter, it will increase the blots on the primary side, right? It will increase.
You tried feedback, right? Hot standby feedback.
Yeah.
What if I have a secondary slave which points to my slave? What will happen at that time? And if I run my select queries on that secondary slave?
Oh, sorry, I didn't get it.
Hot standby feedback.
Yeah.
Well, you said it will send the select queries
hot
information about the select queries running on the slave to the master, right? What if I run the queries on the secondary slave and the secondary slave is dependent on the slave? At that time, will it send the information
So
to the
here
slave?
you are saying that you are using the secondary slave for the reporting purpose as well. So definitely we'll have to say this parameter.
I'm asking if the information sent by the secondary slave will be sent to the master too.
The secondary
If I have a chain of slaves.
No, you have to set the parameter at the secondary slave level.
Secondary slave level, it will send to the slave and the slave will send that to the master. Won't that make the slaves dependent on, master dependent on the slaves?
Sorry.
Won't this parameter make the master dependent on the slave?
The application is dependent on the second.
Okay.
The master does not.
Master will defer the cleanup.
application process will delay. That's
Okay. Okay, and also in our case, when we analyze, the hot updates was causing the problem, was causing the secondary slave queries to cancel. Because while hot updates were done in the master,
Sorry. Yeah.
hot tuple updates,
Hot tuple updates. Okay.
that was actually causing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason the tuples on that, dead tuples on that page was being removed. So we are actually
If you have read the documentation for that, it says that it will increase the blots on the primary side. So that's why we try to avoid these things. So rather than doing a workaround, definitely we did some kind of workaround over here, but it is definitely, it makes a sense to tune your application or the database rather than making some workaround. So that's why we didn't set this parameter max streaming delay. So because definitely it will delay the apply of wall files on the standby, and it will increase the lag. So it again depends on your requirement or the requirement of the business or the client. So accordingly, you have to take a decision. In certain situation, it might make a sense setting this parameter, as you have mentioned, that you set it on your production. So it will vary from the customer to customer.
Okay, so next session we have is at 4:30, which is going to be presented by Robert Haas. So meanwhile, you guys can enjoy it and have a tea break.